choosing a station where you access information.
Governors of Bauchi and Jigawa states meet President Buhari over alarming rate of kidnapping and other security concerns in their respective states. Joint National Assembly Committees on Land Transport pledges continuous support to federal government effort at reviving the railway sector. And wives of the 19 northern state governors resolved to take proactive measures to address substance abuse and HIV and AIDS. Today on Good Morning Nigeria, we'll focus on the oil industry sector roadmap. Now, it is no longer his news that petroleum production and export play a very dominant role in Nigeria's economy, and up till now, the present time, it accounts for about 90% of her gross earnings. And of course, comparatively on the global scale, that puts Nigeria as the 6th largest oil-producing country in the world. And of course, it's estimated to have 159 trillion cubic feet of proven natural gas reserves, making her again one of the 10 natural gas endowments in the whole world. Quite right, Claire. The declining fortune of the oil and gas sector is caused by the depreciating value of crude oil in the international markets, and also vandalism in the Niger Delta region has been a major challenge. Well, for the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation Group Managing Director, he said recently that Nigeria has lost about $7 billion, which is equivalent of a 2.1 trillion naira, to vandalization of oil facilities in the last 10 months. Of course, Blair, you know that since, we discovered oil in Nigeria, it has come with quite a number of challenges. Of course, we have had lack of good policy, regulations, to clear the seemingly, challenges within that sector. And that, of course, have continued to impact, differently on the oil industry. Similarly, again, the refineries have also not been working, to their optimal capacity. We have, again, the Petroleum Industry Bill, which has been, of course, lying at on the floor of the National Assembly. Exactly. It's been there for over several, years. So it might take some unbundling to actually make it come to be. Exactly, and that was to address the issues in the oil industry. And of course, we are told that it was the best way out of the problems within the petroleum sector. It has suffered serious setbacks, of course, passing through tenures of the National Assembly members without seeing the light of day. Well, in trying to find solutions to some of all these challenges, as itemized by Claire, the federal government also last week unveiled a roadmap to revitalize the Nigerian oil and gas industry. Well, at the launch, the president said oil and gas, of course, remains the critical enabler for the successful implementation of the budget, as well as the source of funds for laying a strong foundation for the new and diversified means of reviving the economy. While the new roadmap for the oil and gas sector tags 7 big wins is a 7 short and medium priorities aimed at growing the sector between 2015, which already that's the last year, and that of 2019. Of course, we know that the 7 big wins have their 7, agenda. Now, the major focus of these big wins would be, of course, it has been enumerated, as enumerated by the minister. It will focus on the Niger Delta and security. It would also address issues of, relations, business, environment, as well as investment drive. There are other areas that will, include transparency, of course, within the sector, international, coordination, as well as a gas revolution, and most importantly, I'm sure Nigerians will be looking at for this, the refinery and local production capacity. And the objectives, of course, will be to reduce importation of petroleum production, and that is by 60% in just 2018.
Oh, that's just about another 2 years from now.
Yes, 2 years from now. So want to look at, the components of this roadmap. How will it revive the oil and gas industry? What impact will it have? What are the policies, of course, that will drive some of these areas? These are some of the questions we will be looking at today on today's edition of Good Morning Nigeria. Once again, it's always our pleasure to have you join us the first, of course, in the month of November. Oh, that's right.
Happy New Month.
Happy New Month to you, and welcome to Good Morning Nigeria. I am Claire Adilabu Abdul Razak, and I must welcome Blessing, who's been off set for a while. Blessing, good to have you back with us.
Thank you, Claire. I'm sure nobody noticed. My name is Blessing Abu, and I join Claire in welcoming you to this edition of the program. It's coming to you live on the Africa's largest television network, the NTA. We'll also have the usual segment of our newspaper review, business reports, sports, art, as well as entertainment news. Well, not forgetting the foreign news. But meanwhile, here's Joseph Johnson standing by with the morning news. Good morning to you, Joe, and happy new month.
Thank you, Blessing. Good morning, Claire, and thanks for joining us on the news desk at this hour. Buhari receives governors on security worried over the alarming rate of kidnapping and other security concerns in their states. Governor Mohammed Abubakar of Bauchi and his Jigawa counterpart Badaru Abubakar this Monday held a strategic meeting with President Muhammadu Buhari towards confronting the situation. Correspondent Adamu Sambo reports that the president also conferred with the governors of Plateau and Benue states on similar issues of security, the economy, and politics.
The speed of kidnapping is increasing, and anything that will touch on the security of our states is a matter of great concerns to us. That is why we have rushed before the thing becomes endemic, and we have conferred with Mr. President, and we have the support of Mr. President to rout them out.
We have been fighting insurgency. We have been fighting all these criminal elements in our individual states. But we believe we need a coordinated fight and finally put rest to the problems there. The president is willing to assist us, and I think the army chiefs will be briefed, and we will certainly see some action.
Meanwhile, President Muhammadu Buhari is worried and shocked by the recently released Human Rights Watch report, which alleges sexual abuse and exploitation of women and girls in camps for those displaced by the Boko Haram insurgency. A statement from the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity, Garba Shehu, said Nigerians and the international community can be rest assured that the allegations raised in the HRW are not being taken lightly by the Buhari administration. To this end, the President has instructed the Inspector General of Police and the governors of the affected states to immediately commence investigations into the issue. The statement said their findings will determine the next course of action for the government and define an appropriate response. While the Nigerian military continues to work hard to ensure that the victims of Boko Haram terrorism can soon return safely to their homes, the government will do its best to ensure their protection and welfare in the temporary IDP camps. To the legislature now, where the Joint National Assembly Committee on Land Transport have pledged continuous support to federal government's effort at reviving the railway sector. Onyenaya Kaluoka reports that this was while visiting some projects in Abuja as part of their oversight functions.
Since the inception of this present administration, efforts have been geared towards completion of projects inherited and also initiating new ones.
The the kind of dividends that Nigerians are looking for. I'm hoping that by this oversight, we will be able to critically look at the areas where the Ministry of Transportation need help.
I want to assure that, we have this an efficient rail transport system. We'll do all we can to greatly assist the NRC.
They should look for better days ahead, and they should support the government by reporting any miscreant that is trying to sabotage government efforts.
And with an increased cases of multiple appointments being held by some Nigerians and unlawful emoluments being received in such capacities, a public hearing at the instance of the House Committee on Public Service Matters has held to address the issue. Dennis Adegmoloye reports that officials from the Ministry of Finance and Office of the Accountant General of the Federation explained their positions on the matter.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is very unfortunate that some highly placed Nigerians are holding multiple appointments from the federal government, collecting multiple emoluments and enjoying perquisite of office, while majority of Nigerians are swallowing in abject poverty, unemployment and lack of deprivations.
We have a mandate to ensure that nobody earns more than one salary. In doing this, we have tried as much as possible to take advantage of the bank verification number by engaging the Nigerian interbank settlement system to authenticate all employee bank accounts.
The issue of IPPIS, as soon as the automation of the process is concluded on the human resources aspect, the issue of dictation of any anomalies that will occur in the entire process will be dictated automatically.
A bit on security now. Towards boosting internal security, the Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Tukur Buratai, has met with the Inspector General of Police, Ibrahim Idris, with a view of enhancing collaboration. Dino Justice reports that the move is to close gaps and work towards better collaboration in tackling internal security challenges.
We really need to come together and synergize more than ever before at this very trying period, especially a series of communal crises, the issue in the Niger Delta as well, and indeed the Northeast. The farmers had us clash.
Now we are still pressing our commands to establish the joint operation center because we believe that it's very, very necessary. Of course, you take note of what happened in Funtua recently. See how it's good to operate in a joint, so that you speak with one voice and we have a uniform of, in most tackling some of these situations we have all over the country.
Now, Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Babachir David Lawal, has assured the indigents of the Federal Capital Territory of inclusion in political appointments in future, as the matter will be brought to the attention of President Muhammadu Buhari. This assurance was contained in a statement by the Director Press of the SGF office, Bolaji Adebi, which stated that the SGF apologized to FCT indigents for their exclusion in federal government appointments made so far. It explains that the SGF received the honor of Abaji Alhaji Adamu Baba Yunusa, who is also Chairman FCT Council of Chiefs, who complained about the exclusion of FCT indigents in certain federal appointments contravenes certain provision of the 1999 Constitution and federal character principle, which specifies that FCT should be treated as if it were one of the states of Nigeria. The honor appealed to the FGF to carry the FCT along when political appointments are made. 5 of the 19 northern states governors have resolved to take proactive measures to address substance abuse and HIV and AIDS infection among adolescents in their various states. Salwa Khalil Ibrahim reports that the forum is disturbed by the increasing rate of social malaise associated with the abuse of substances among youths in the region.
The forum has decided to come up with a structured plan to address the issue of substance abuse in northern Nigeria.
These are the kind of things that we can achieve as mothers, as advocates, as wives of governors.
We have also taken it as a priority to ensure that adolescents have access to HCT facilities.
And that's the news for now. Good morning, Nigeria. We'll continue with Claire and Blessing just after the break. I'm Joseph Johnson. Bye-bye.
If you hear a bomb explosion or gunshots of an active shooter, that might be a terror attack. At such times, always remember 3 action words: run, hide, report. Don't try to run towards the terror scene to save the situation, because there might be a second bomb blast or another attack. Run far away and take cover. Make sure you are safe first. Yes, it is in our nature to sympathize over the hurt, but remember, only trained personnel can help in such situations. When in a secured environment, promptly call relevant authorities and help will come. For anonymous reporting, call 09630-3250-5 or 0813-2222-106. If you see something, say something. Nigeria unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria. Time now for our business report, where we have that the Nigerian Stock Exchange is losing about 195 billion naira in about 2 weeks as negative sentiment persists. Well, the details we'll find out from Joy Uzo.
The Minister of Finance, Kemi Adeosun, has urged Nigerian women to key into the Central Bank of Nigeria's 220 billion naira Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises Development Fund. She regretted that despite the fact that 62% of the facility is for women, less than 20% of it has been drawn down as at the last count. She challenged Nigerian women to avail themselves of the immense opportunities created by the current economic challenges in the country. The minister stated this recently at an event in Lagos State. The harsh economic climate being experienced at present in the country has made the aviation sector to record a decline of 9% in activities in the second quarter of this year. According to figures published by the National Bureau of Statistics, the NBS in its report on the aviation sector explained that the number of travelers, aircraft, cargo weight, as well as mails that were moved within the period declined as against what were recorded in the first quarter of the year. For instance, the report revealed that 54,405 aircraft arrived at or departed from Nigerian airports in the second quarter of this year. This report added represented a decrease of 9% relative to the 59,808 aircraft recorded in the first quarter. In terms of passenger traffic, the report stated that this dropped marginally to 3,532,775 passengers in the second quarter of this year, from 3,549,360 recorded in the first quarter. The report added that in the first and second quarters of the year, domestic travels recorded a smaller growth rate than international travels. Activities on the Nigerian Stock Exchange (NSE) last week continued on a negative note as investors lose 104 billion naira, thereby bringing the total losses in 2 consecutive weeks to 195 billion naira. The Nigerian Stock Exchange recorded negative performance of minus 5.3% from January to October this year. Most of this negative growth, according to Sahid Bashir, Head Investment Research Meristem Securities Limited, is driven by flow of bad news in the economy. He was, however, of the view that the market can still overcome the negative performance before the end of this year, adding that investors need the guidance of analysts' research notes to protect and grow their investments. Next is a graphic summary of recent trading figures on the floor of the NSE. That's it on Business Package for now. Thanks for watching. I am Joy Uzo.
All right. that was Joy Uzo bringing us, of course, our business news this morning, and many thanks to you, Joy. We're moving on now. Coming up next will be the newspaper review.
And here we welcome Bayo Atoyebi, a newspaper reviewer, again for today. Good morning, Bayo.
Welcome, Blessing. You look set for Calabar
Carnival.
Carnival.
Okay, well, being the first day in the month, we'll start counting down to the end of the year.
Yes.
It's great.
Good morning,
And it's good.
Claire.
It's good thing happening in Calabar.
Yes,
it's very good. Then.
I mean, it's a national party going on there, and we invite everybody around the world to. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, let's start off the review. Claire, would like to take the first shot?
Okay, thank you for obliging me. Let's begin with The Guardian. And The Guardian leads with the story, how government agencies frustrate food export at nations' airports. How government agencies frustrate food export at nations' airports. And it comes with a rider, NCAA defends presence of multiple officials. NCAA, of course, defends presence of multiple officials. And the picture story that has made the frontline page on The Guardian is that of National Association of Microfinance Banks and, of course, Central Bank of Nigeria marking the World Savings Day with students of course, a government secondary school in Abuja yesterday. Now, below that, Kuka, that's Bishop Father Matthew Hassan Kuka, visits EFCC cell and prays for Abati Abanikoro and Fani Kadi. You can find details of this story on page 6. On the bottom there, you will find some trending stories. Government renames PIB as PRB, submits draft bill to National Assembly soon. That's a petroleum reform bill. So government renames PIB as PRB, submit draft bill to National Assembly soon. Now, Boko Haram kills 5 soldiers, 4 others in ambush. Details of that on page 3. 4 students die in Oyo auto crash, also trending there. And residents flee Delta community over herdsmen's attacks. That story is on page 8. Now, on the right column, you find 1 in 7 kids suffer acute air pollution, and that's coming from UNICEF. Now, there are, areas there, pointers there, Onisha, Abad, Kaduna, among most polluted cities, and government deploys 1,473 midwives to health facilities. That's a very sad story coming out from that UNICEF. Bless you.
All right, Claire, for some other not too pleasant stories dotting the front pages of 2 papers I have with me. I have about 3, but the first 2, I'll start off with that of The Nation. Shocked Buhari probes IDPs camps, rape claims. That's on the front page of The Nation. It's a human rights story. There's a rider to that. Human Rights Watch unveils damning report. You'll find that story right there on the front leading for The Nation. And quickly now to The Punch, is the same story as the lead story. Outrage greets alleged sexual abuse of IDPs by soldiers, others. That story you find on page 7. And the writers to that story, Human Rights Watch documents 45 cases and Buhari orders investigation. That's how The Punch captured it this morning. But just above the masthead for The Punch, we have other stories. Sokoto agog for Sultan's 10th coronation anniversary, and that's what you find on page 14. And still on page 14, there are 2 other stories. Receding Lake Chad leaves 40 million jobless, and also insecurity in North worries ACF, that's Arewa Consultative Forum. El Rufai hails summit. All those details you find on page 14. But right there, for the authority, before I let Bayo come in, let's go to some other stories from the authority. Leading for the authority, of course, it's one story of privatization, actually looking all right. $243.3 million investment under threat. Banks wary of providing more loans. Federal government in secret probe of sale. And creditors report liquidator to FRC PACAC. You'll find out the details on page 2. We'll take on other aspects of some anti-graft stories when we return with Bayo's
yes. Yes, truly President Muhammad Buhari has expressed serious concern about a report by Human Rights Watch about massive sexual and right abuses in internally displaced person camps. And these, according to the report, involves officials, soldiers, policemen. And the president has ordered the Inspector General of Police and the state governors concerned to immediately investigate. In fact, one paper, I think The Nation it is, reports the case of a 17-year-old girl allegedly raped by a policeman. The girl became pregnant and the policeman threatened the girl to shoot her if she told anybody. And there is also another report from one newspaper that is alleging that some of the females in the camps, between the number of 300 to 500, have already tested to HIV positive. And they are all coming from exploitation from officials at the IDP camps. It's a very, very grave thing, and it came as a shock, in fact, to Mr. President yesterday when he gave the directive. The other sad story there, too, is about kerosene explosion.
Yes, you find that on the front page of The Nation. But let me quickly look at that. There's a picture right there on the front page of The Nation. Siblings die in kerosene explosion. Find out details on page 45. But there is that of the baby, one of the victims, and also one Mrs. Onyemechi in the hospital yesterday. It's right there.
Okay, this one is also a report about kerosene explosion somewhere in Cross River State. And it involved a tricycle driver who went to a petrol station at a specific road. They didn't mention the Idoro road. He bought petrol and got home, and while he was trying to put petrol in the lamp, the children came gathering around, and unfortunately it exploded. He lost 2 of the children, and he himself is fatally burned and is still in the hospital. Now, for a long time, we have had these instances of kerosene explosion behind us. It was said to have been conducted on one side by persons who tend to mix petrol and kerosene during the time kerosene was scarce. Others also allege that when they were using the pumping system, sometimes when they pump petrol, they probably have not cleared the system properly, and then when they pump kerosene, there's a tendency that this gets to mix. I think since it's beginning to rear its head, those in charge should have to look critically into it.
Okay, let's see to some other stories. I think Claire took on some earlier on from our paper, but for The Nation, there are some other stories just above the masthead. We have life imprisonment for kidnappers in Kano State, and that's story found on page 43. And still on page 43, 5 soldiers killed in Borno Boko Haram ambush, and Jigawa governors, deputies' pay held back for lack of BVN. Of course, that's a biometric verification number. And federal government to attract $3 trillion investment through rail. But that story you find on page 8. The story about Bishop Kuka meeting with Fani Kayode, Obanikoro and Abati at EFCC is also trending here. But you find that on page 9 of the paper. Okay, Claire?
Let me quickly take Vanguard just before we wrap up our newspaper review. Vanguard, of course, is leading with alleged corruption. Justices Okoro, Ademola Nguta risk 58 years in jail, and it has federal government formally files charges against them today, and lawyers protest call for judges to step aside. You find the 3 judges in question right on the front page there, of course, with the different allegations against them. And just above the nameplate, we have why amendment of CCT Act by NAS will fail. And this is coming from Sagi and Mammon. Details of that on page 8. And pregnant women lament high cost of services in Lagos hospitals. You want to find out details of that on page 37. And then just before we round off, just a few words
just quickly
from
about the alleged cases with judges. There are 3 developments. One is that 2 groups yesterday came out demonstrating and were protesting that this is not a fight against corruption but a revenge mission. and therefore they were contending that judges should not be intimidated. They also submitted their protest to the Human Rights Commission. Meanwhile, the Telegraph is also reporting that 2 justices of the Supreme Court have voluntarily rescued themselves by not longer. Another paper has, like the one you just read now, is already saying that federal government is to formally charge 3 of the judges at the court today. 1 judge is to face 4 counts of charge, while the 2 others are to face 3 counts of charges each. And between them, they are likely, if found guilty, to spend about 58 years of jail term.
All right, bye. Other stories are there, but I'm sure you get your papers. There's some stories on the oil sector, but that is what we're discussing. So keep it on the wrap as well to look at other forms of investment with gas, especially. Tomorrow, definitely, we'll see you again.
Tomorrow will be another day, God willing.
All right, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria. We'll take this break to bring you some messages. And it's time to take a look at the roadmap for the oil industry.
Nigerians. Suicide bombers are not spirits. They are not ghosts. They are human beings like you and me. They live amongst us. They are your neighbors. They are your friends today, but terrorists tomorrow. So you must know your neighbor now. Security begins with you and me. Know your neighbor. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects, and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me.
If you see something, say something. Nigeria unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Hear the call of change. Stand up, Nigeria. Change is here and it's going to stay. Change begins with you. Oh yeah, make we go. Go to so let the change begin from within. Look at you, yeah. It's with you and me. Change begins with me. Change begins with me. Change begins with me.
If you just joined us, the program is Good Morning Nigeria, showing live on the network service of the NTA. Time now for a background report to prompt our conversation, taking a look at the roadmap for the oil industry. While the black gold has taken Nigeria through many highs and lows at one time, it propelled the nation to boom and also prosperity. And at other times, like the present, it is perceived as a doom that has led to the many challenges the nation is grappling with. The recent launch of the oil and gas industry roadmap, tagged the 7 big wins by President Muhammadu Buhari, is a bold attempt to ensure that Nigeria's oil and gas endowments remain a blessing to the citizens. Well, here's a background report by correspondent Makut Simon Machan.
Since oil was discovered in Oloibiri, present-day Bayelsa State in 1956, Nigeria's fortunes changed dramatically, altering the lives of its citizens. Prior to this discovery, the nation's economy thrived on agriculture, mining, and other services that created an opportunity for Nigerians to tap into the vast natural resources. Turned its attention to oil and virtually neglected all sectors, scripting the nation to operating a mono economy. These and other issues later emerged to put serious pressure on the sector, thereby impacting the economy. For instance, fall in oil prices in the international market, lack of capacity to refine petroleum products locally, militancy in oil-producing areas, lack of transparency and accountability in the sector, dependency on obsolete laws to regulate the sector, technological deficiencies, among others, have exposed the challenges of the oil industry. Reforming the sector has therefore become inevitable. The launch of the oil and gas industry roadmap tagged the 7 big wins by President Muhammadu Buhari has been welcomed by stakeholders as a strategic framework with robust priorities to grow Nigeria's oil and gas sector in the short, medium and long term. The 7 big wins will focus on key areas including Niger Delta development and security of the oil producing region, policy and regulation, business environment and investment drive, transparency and efficiency, stakeholder management and international coordination, gas revolution, refineries and local oil production capacity. These areas cover virtually all critical areas that have continued to hamper the growth of the industry and deny Nigerians the benefits of oil and gas endowments. If all goes according to plan, the militancy in the Niger Delta that has led to disruption of oil production will be tackled in a holistic manner that will put to rest some of the factors that led to agitations. Hopefully also, the lack of local production and refining capacity will also be tackled in a manner that will drastically cut the huge expenses of importing refined products, thereby saving Nigeria's scarce foreign exchange. It is also expected that policies will be churned out to bring on board new laws as proposed in the stagnated petroleum industry bill so as to drive investment and competition in the industry and improve transparency and accountability. These and other projections of the 7 big wins are seen as critical to the Nigerian economy despite current challenges. As President Muhammadu Buhari noted during the launch of the 7 big wins, the golden era of high oil prices may not be here now, but oil and gas resources still remain the most immediate and practical keys out of Nigeria's present economic crisis. Guests on Good Morning Nigeria are ready to dissect the new petroleum industry roadmap.
All right, Makud Simon Matcham there, of course, setting up our discussion this morning. Once again, if you've just joined us, the conversation is on the new roadmap to the oil industry. It's also called the 7 big wins. And time for us now to welcome our guests right here in Abuja. We have Dr. Evans Dirisu, is chartered accountant, tax advisor, management and financial consultant, also a former director, National Petroleum Investment Management Services, NAPIMS. Mr. Dr. Dirisu, thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you.
All right. We also have Mr. Kolawole Banwo. He's a Senior Program Officer, Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Center, CISLAC. Mr. Banwo, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Good morning, Nigerians.
Did we miss anything from your...
No, we've got it perfect.
All right, we have other guests joining us from our other locations in the country. We have from our Benin studio, Professor Wumi Iledari. He is a professor of petroleum energy, economics, management, and strategy. He's also director, Emerald Energy Institute, University of Port Harcourt, and president, Nigerian Association for Energy Economics. We'd like to welcome Professor Iledari to Good Morning Nigeria today.
Good morning. Delight to be with you.
And from our Lagos studio, we have joining us Sir Alex Nei, is a petroleum engineer and also an oil and gas consultant. Welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Morning. Thank you.
All right, gentlemen, thank you for joining us for this important discussion. And just to add that we also expected the Honorable Minister of State for Petroleum, but as it is, I'm sure that today was supposed to be a day for meeting with the Niger Delta elders, but we don't know where, what the reasons are. But let's get on with our conversation, gentlemen. Let's begin by having your understanding of what the new roadmap is all about. Let me start with you. Dr. Dirisu, do we have a basis for this new roadmap?
How? Well, the roadmap was launched last week, 27th of last month, October. And as the Honorable Minister of State for Petroleum Resources himself acknowledged, there have been quite a number of roadmaps launched in the past. Several years ago, we had one which intended at that time to achieve 14 billion oil reserves in the country, and as well as production capacity for about 4 billion barrels of crude per day. Some of these roadmaps, well, like every plan and budgets, you do achieve some degree of successes and then some failures. So it's one of those roadmaps, but as acknowledged, they intend to make it work. And it contained also the successes they have achieved, and it focuses on 7 key areas. They call them big wins. First of all, they intend to look at policies and regulations in the oil industry, and as well as look at the business environment in which oil and gas is operated in the country. It talks about gas revolution. It talks also about stakeholders and the interest of stakeholders. Essentially, it also mentioned a very important aspect which is fundamental, that is the Niger Delta security and development, which I think is a key to, you know, all the plans you might have in this country. It also touches in the legislative aspect. It talks about the petroleum industry reform bills, and as well as the physical reforms in the industries. I think it touches every aspect of the industry, including legislation, stakeholders, and I think one important aspect is it tends to try to make the stakeholders understand operations of the oil and gas industry. And I think that is a very, very important thing to think about, because although oil gives us a lot of revenue in this country, very many Nigerians are very, very uninformed about its operation. The only aspect they understand is where it immediately affects them, that is the downstream sector, where you go to buy petrol and you are interested in at what rate petrol is sold. But otherwise, I think one aspect of the program which is quite appealing is the desire to educate stakeholders, both within the oil producing industry and as well as outside the oil producing industry. If stakeholders outside the oil producing areas understand what it takes to produce oil, then they will have empathy, and therefore legislation such as petroleum industry bills will have easy passage, and they will have the understanding of other Nigerians. So I think the focus here should be enlightenment campaigns, both for residents. But as we discuss it further, we might be able to talk about...
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Dirisu. Of course, we'll be back to you in the course of the discussion. Let's take a look at other guests' perspective. We will definitely take a look at some other areas in nitty-gritty. Dr. Banwo, well, let's have a feel of what... These are, okay, Mr. These are non-new narratives for the industry watchers. What exactly is this roadmap seeking, or what do you perceive it's seeking to address?
Well, like they will say in ordinary Nigerian language, the difference between ipekere and plantain chips is packaging. But I think this is a welcome development, the advent of this administration. Many of us in civil society were quite critical of the administration, because even though there were good intentions to reform the sector, we kept saying we could not see a clear pathway and commitments with which government can be held accountable. Yes, things were happening, but we could not say, where do you expect us to be in 2 years? Where do you expect us to be in 3 years? How do we measure progress? So for me, the roadmap provides an opportunity for that, at least for this administration. From the 20 fixes, you remember we started with 20 fixes, NNPC, and then it was trimmed down to 12, and now we have 7 big wins. All of them just trying to get the information and condense them into compartmentalized manners and link them together in such a way that the sector grows. I think it is a welcome development. It is for giving Nigerians an idea of what the government wants to do, and it's making commitment. I noticed that the third part of the roadmap has to do with key performance indicators, and there's a work plan with timing, in which case, with time we can monitor and measure progress. However, it is important to note that the thrust of the reform and the roadmap is very important. Everywhere aspects that have been captured are very key. And looking forward, you see, because one of the challenges we have in this kind of situation as a country is that because we have recession and we have dwindling fortunes, we focus on the now and we do not look ahead. The roadmap provides an opportunity for us to say, beyond this recession, these resources are still there. There is gas that we are not taking advantage of. We need to improve, because when you talk about, I noticed that they talk about downstream, they talk about the upstream, they talk about fiscal regime. These are key things that are very important in the sector going forward. The fiscal regimes to ensure that you balance government having maximum take and ensuring that the interest and profit of investors are also protected so that you can attract investment to increase your reserves. At the moment, our reserves are declining because of the uncertainty in the sector. But now we see a clear path that indicates that government wants to do something and wants to start boosting investor confidence. Also, the sector has a tendency to operate as an enclave industry outside of overall economic and socio-economic configuration of it. But when you look at this, there's an attempt to say, look, we will do it in such a way that we're also thinking of creating jobs. Refining, when you talk about the downstream, when you talk about the midstream, you are talking about...
Let me hold you on for a while, because we'll get back to you to look at, the different compartments, that the roadmap has been classified. But let's get to Lagos. Mr. Alex Name, what's your own perspective? Considering the different policies like Dr. Dirisu had enumerated earlier on, past policies to revamp the petroleum sector, considering also the immediate need now to diversify the economy, is there a genuine basis, a real basis for a new roadmap in the petroleum sector?
Well, it's overdue. My concern is we're always coming up with this 7-7. I remember Yaradua came up with 7. This one is 7. But the bottom line is we must fix this country. And to fix this country, it will take some bold steps like what they're trying to do. First, the Niger Delta, which is the way they handle the security and whatever they are doing, they need to be re-engineered. Because a situation where people are being compensated for being violent, are living there that are not violent, they are neglected. So day one, when they started the amnesty, I said, look, when you reward violence, you promote violence. Our young men now out there, it is now rewarding to be violent. So you have the girls going to school, the boys, you have to be violent. If you are violent, you get reward. That's why the rejuvenation of all these systems. So a criminal is a criminal. An agitator is an agitator. So we must draw the line. I think the best thing for the government to do is, the place has been neglected since 79. I've always said that in the US, if you get to an area where oil is produced, you can see the impact, how decent and how well behaved and how things work in such area. You go to Texas, you can see the difference. You go to other states, you can see it. But here, it's not so. But that notwithstanding, I think fighting and shooting gun is not the solution. The solution, the government has to sit down and do a proper engineering. This syndrome of touts leading and saying this and all that, that's not the point. The point is the place needs development. People should agitate properly in a civilized manner to achieve results. Like, people are there, they are intelligent. Let them go to school, they should be involved and being employed in the industry, because that's one of the things I've been saying. Since 79 I came in, I found out that the people are being marginalized in terms of employment. People like us go and get transferred here. If I'd come here, probably being from Warri, maybe they won't even take me. So these are the fundamental issues that has to be solved. Get the people well educated, employ them to participate and benefit working, not carrying guns, you give them money and all that. So that's the main concern. The other aspect of it is when we talk about diversing our economy to Greek and all that, the fundamental oil is still the main thing you need. So there must be some prudence in running this business. There's too much loopholes, excess wastage. You cannot, in a situation like this, have high costs and expect to have our costs operating in this country, whether IOC or local, is way out, because salaries here and salaries outside, they are not the same. And I'm really disappointed that we are still sitting down, watch our costs go the way they are. In a situation like this, our costs should go down. People here are less paid compared to other places like in the US. So I don't see why we spend this much money drilling a well. Now the security outfit has become a business. You want to go anywhere, you need this, you tie all those things. Everybody is making money out of this. I think it's time Nigerians wake up and say, look, enough is enough. We have run this industry without having several millions invested in security and all that. So I think the government too should do something to make sure the security agents do their job diligently. It's not a money-making venture, because all these things add to the cost. We need to bring down our costs, either drilling or in terms of security or in terms of purchase. If you have a business and you don't know what you are putting into that business, and somebody tells you, this is what I want to spend, you say yes. So what type of business is that? So I think we have to sit down and re-engineer the whole industry and make sure that our costs are competitive. The corrupt practices should disappear. We are hearing all kinds of people lift oil, do this and all these things are simple things to correct if we are really serious. But I think we've not gotten to that point where we are really serious and want to buy the bullet. This country must wake up to buy the bullet and put all these things behind. There are too many corrupt systems going on, unchallenged, unattended to. And it's not good. These young men are in the swamp there, they are seeing what is going on. People are living like, okay, let us carry on. If we carry on, when these ones leave, others will come because you are rewarding violence. So there must be a different way to solve this problem than calling a bunch of people who revolt and compensate them. Another set will come. So we're in a mess. As regards the refinery, we've said that over and over. This country cannot continue to import refined products. It is a shame. The Biafrans fought the war. They never bought import one barrel from anywhere. How did they do it? Simple refineries. In Abuja, they have one, several. These are very simple technology. We've gone to the point where we can challenge this country and get these things done and domesticate the industry. That way, the money stays in. We export products to other places and generate dollars. We have nearby countries that are way down. If we refine, we can sell to them and make dollars. They are not going to pay us in naira because the exchange will be in dollars. So we'll be generating revenue. So we have the population here to absorb it. We have population around us in surrounding countries to do. Or are we going to sit down here and let Ghana be giving us petrol? That would be a shame. So we need to sit down and do proper engineering. I think we've been joking about this. It's just like a child's play. And it is time we get out of this system. If the best people you're going to get to do this job are from one family, take them.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Alex Nay. Of course, we'll be back to you, and we understand you'd like to leave very soon, but we'll be back to you to actually take on some of the other areas that you have pointed out. Now, let's quickly go back to our Benin studio, where we earlier introduced Professor Wumi Iledari. Of course, he's a professor of petroleum energy. Guest on the program this morning. There are other areas that you should be concerned as regards the roadmap itself. What are those views?
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to be here, and I thank the other panelists. First, let me commend the Honorable Minister, and I understand what all the panelists have said. And I really think, even looking at what Alex mentioned, if you take time to look at this roadmap, you will see that some of those things that are being raised are well addressed. I mean, first, you know, the last time we have an oil and gas policy was 2000. That's 16 years ago. And the purpose of the policy was to be able to develop the petroleum industry bill in 2008, and that went nowhere. So the re-engineering that Alex is talking about is what I see in this roadmap. And I venture to say, I know when my students read this roadmap, they probably would think that I participated in it, because on nearly all the key points, in fact, my own, what I call a memo to PNB was 7 agenda. And I see them in this particular roadmap. In that case, domestication of oil and gas towards building a national economic development. I see it here. Secondly, you cannot have a law unless you have a policy. I see the policy framework for gas, the policy framework for oil. And I see that the emphasis, even with our gas, is what has been advocated for many years, which is target our gas towards building our domestic economy. I see a lot of that in this gas revolution with respect to LPG, with respect to compressed natural gas, and with respect to gas to power. I also see answer to national security issue in the Niger Delta, which is infrastructure development in the Niger Delta and economic empowerment. These are things I've advocated for many years, and I see it in this roadmap. I also see the concept of transparency and accountability. Even though the roadmap did not say much about accountability, they talk about efficiency. And then you can see capacity building, and you can see empowerment of institutions. You see things like research and development centers. So we don't have problem with policy formulation in Nigeria. The only snag that I see, which may be a problem in the future, is the capacity to be able to implement some of this good policy, in my opinion. I also see the local refinery. I do not believe we need to sell them. And I see that even in this roadmap, that maybe revamping it and doing equity share participation may be a good way to go. I also see the idea of increasing revenue by the government with respect to targeting 5 billion over the next few years. Those are good policy. You begin with policy, and then you begin to be pragmatic. I want to commend them, even though I have reservation with respect to the way Nigeria does things. I think government needs to spread their net wider. And that's why I commend you. Right now, you see the representation on this panel. You see educator, you see practicing engineer, you see social NGOs, and you see a retired industry person. I think the government needs to spread their net wider than they are doing. They need to move away from just the people they know and look at other people that can help them implement this policy. To me, I commend them because this is a well-packaged policy to address some of the issues that Alex mentioned. Now, there are some points there that needs to be debated. Take, for example, the targeting of 3 million barrels per day. Right now, we have about 36 billion barrels, and we have 2.4 to 2.5. If we are going to go to 3 million, then we need about 45 billion barrels. This is going to be the next 5 years. How are we going to get additional 9 billion? I don't see that in this policy. But those are the things that can be debated even as we begin the implementation. Listen, let us commend when a good job is done. If the president, for example, we have a policy like this, like attempt to be able to solve the economic problems, I think we will move faster. Again, I want to advise this government, for this oil and gas industry, don't limit it to lawyers. Get professionals beyond lawyers. And the same thing, the government needs to start to think in terms of how to attack the economic problem. And I know this is not relevant, but let me say it. It needs chief economic advisor, not an individual. It's an office, and it doesn't have one. You can't solve economic problems with lawyers. You cannot solve the oil and gas industry problems with lawyers. I want to challenge them to think in terms of spreading the net and get the people that can help them to implement this policy, which to me is a very good policy. It's a good beginning, because we've not had one since 13 years ago. And let me know the legislators are ready, because I participated in more or less preparing them for this type of thing. They are more than ready. I have conversation with them, with others, about 3 weeks ago. And all of them are waiting for the government to do something with this industry. This is a very good beginning. And I wish every ministry would think about doing something like this. And things can turn around faster than we think if we actually find people who can implement this policy, putting a round peg in a round hole. It is not enough to have a good policy. It must be well implemented. And that's where the snag is. But we can correct it.
All right, Professor Wumi Iledare, thank you very much for the points that you have raised. And that, of course, lead me to Lagos again, where Mr. Alex Name is. Mr. Alex Name, you've all talked about this policy. You've lauded it. It's a good policy. Implementation, of course, is another challenge. But let us begin to look at how of course, a roadmap will begin to address some of those challenges that, of course, bedeviling the sector. You talked about transparency and corruption. You also talked about the challenges in the Niger Delta. Do you see any aspect of this roadmap, addressing those areas?
Well, the roadmap is already mentioning and trying to address the issue. But my concern is, Wumi had mentioned it clearly. You see, it's good to have a good policy, but the implementation will require people who know the business. I think that has been our problem from time. I came back as to work in this country since '79, and one of the things I keep saying is, any country that sits down and expects people to do things for them, they are jokers. You cannot, people will say, transfer technology. Who is going to transfer technology to you? In this country today, I can tell you, we have people who have the capability to do what we are supposed to do right. But because of the way things are, man, no man, and all these things, we're getting into more trouble. And it's becoming very, very annoying to a lot of us, because this is an industry we all know very well. If you want people from anywhere in the world, we can bring them here. And they are here. Way back 1974, 75, this country spent so much money sending people abroad to study petroleum engineering. A lot of us were involved. The intention we had then is, look, in the next 10 years, Nigeria was going to be another Japan. Only to come back, you just find things, in a country where you have man operating at 95% and merit at 5%, you cannot move. We have to go outside the normal circle, get the people that can do this job. Wumi has mentioned enough already, but there's no way you can solve the problem keeping a square peg in the round hole. It can't work. It is not an industry where you sell and buy Gary. This is an industry where you got to know what to do from the beginning to the end. So these are very challenging things. We can do refinery easily. Drilling, production, now you have so many fabrication yards, but somebody has to know how to put these things in perspective to be able to achieve the desired result. And that is the crossroad we are. And that should be done without man. If the two people that can get it done, they are the same parents, for God's sake, get them. It's like going to play soccer. You use quota system to play soccer, you won't get the best. There are people in this industry, there are people in this country, outside this country, who are Nigerians, that could be drafted, and we can build this system easily. But we have to reduce all these leakages. We're talking of oil companies lead oil, this one do this and all that. These are things we know. There's no way you can lift a barrel of oil. A lot of us will tell you easily. But when you have people compromising and not even knowing what is, sometimes based on ignorance, things happen. We have to go back to the drawing board in this country and fix things right by getting the right people to do the job. As regards the Niger Delta case, I still believe, like I said to Kunjo Iweala when we had the debate, when you reward violence, you promote violence. That is not a solution. A permanent solution is to see how you get the people involved. If you go to Kula and some of those places in River State, when I was the Eastern Operations Manager, we got them with OND and all that in Chevron, brought them into work. All the bombing and everything that happened, destroying facilities, you go to Inda, Idama, in River State, nothing happened because I employed their own people, joined other Nigerians, trained them to do the job, so they cannot sit down there and see their livelihood go. Their parents appreciated it. You go to all those places, the best bungalows and best houses there, they are built by those boys who employed them. And they've now actualized themselves. No human being wants to be in the trench carrying gun. I don't think that is right. We have to do something. And we are human beings. And I'm calling on the government to look at people as human beings. This sectional thinking, I want Mr. This there, I want Mr. That there, and you just muddle things up. And at the end of the day, we're back to square one. We have capable people in this country, both outside and inside. Nigeria has spent so much money to train sound human beings, either in the universities or whatever. We know them. At least being the regional director for SP for Africa, BOT, I think we know the people this thing could be carried out effectively if the government wants to get it done. But we must get out of the syndrome of man no man. Do 95% on merit, do 5% on man no man. We will move forward as a country.
Mr. Naim, just before we let you go, since you're particular about the Niger Delta and the security, which is part of the 7-point roadmap, the minister, in explaining that aspect, the minister was reported to have said that the roadmap will move security from being the responsibility of the military and security operatives to the oil companies. Now, how do you see that restoring the security within the region and of course addressing that challenge?
Well, in terms of security in the region, you see, most of these young men carrying guns and all whatnot, in their quiet moment, I don't think that's what they want to do for a living. I was in Escravos there as a superintendent. There is no village in that area a lot of us didn't go to. Whether be you, Yoruba, superintendent, Hausa, Igbo, we moved freely. The people were receptive. But development was going on. They were being, you give scholarship to a community over a period of 20 years. When I came in 79, over 25 years, not one person from that area was even a supervisor. So the scholarship given, how many graduates have come out of it? Zero. So it was like a deliberate act to keep them behind the fence rather than keeping them inside the fence. Now with time, there are no universities in the swamp. So all those kids you see, they go to universities outside their environment. When they come back, they get to their environment, they are behind the fence looking for a job. Their classmates are inside the fence working, they are seeing them. How do you think they are going to react? So there must be some fairness and equity in whatever any person is doing. That's why my model in River State, while I was there as the Eastern Operations Manager, is an inclusive process whereby if we are employing 14 technicians, so out of these 14, let us get 6 or 7 from there. The rest go around the whole of Nigeria, the best guys, mix them up, send them to training in Escravos. When they come out, you distribute them. And that's the way to go. The sectionalism in the system kills the people. And they are sitting down there watching. In confusion, what do? Let's get going, let's do this, let's do this. We are destroying our young men out there. And the girls, they go to school. You're going to see a dangerous trend in the Niger Delta, where young men are violent. The girls go to school. When they come out, they can't say because they are Niger Delta, they go and marry somebody. If you look at the trend now, very successful young girls in the Niger Delta, they are marrying outside the Niger Delta. Because the young men are involved in all these quick money. Okay, let's carry oil, let's do this. No girl that is well trained that will come out and say, I'm going to put myself down because I have to be from here. That is bad. I think there should be deliberate effort to get people go through a process. I was born in Warri, I grew up there. The model was to go through school, be like Professor Dudley, people like Professor Osejolomi Thomas and things like that. Professional engineers, doctors and things like that. That was what we grew up to be. But right now, the role model in the Niger Delta has changed. You have to be violent because when you are violent, you'll be rewarded. You drive the best Jeep and all that. So you talk to some young men, you say, bros, I'm not going to go that way, you know. Afterwards, this man not go to school. He's making hell of money. So what the hell? So this is really, really bad. And we have to change that scenario. Change the mindset of a young man out there by doing something positive. I don't think all these middlemen, oh, I'm in charge of the Niger Delta, I will do this, I will do that. These are just fluke. Everybody looking for money. The reality is to get down there and do a thorough job. And the industry, we can do a thorough job of the industry and still make people comfortable. This country will make money because all the targets you are setting, there are no targets you can get by playing your 10th or 20th 11. It's not going to work.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Alex Naim, petroleum engineer and oil and gas consultant. Thank you. We really didn't want you to leave, but since you have some other equally pressing engagements, we'd like to say a big thank you. You joined us from our Lagos studio. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure.
Okay, still good morning, Nigeria. And of course, the discussion continues right here in our Abuja studio as well as with Professor Wumi in Benin. Now, Dr. Dirisu, let's take a look at some of those areas raised that have been aspects of the Niger Delta, of course, security, insecurity, and what we need to do. But of course, there is also that aspect of looking at 2.2 million barrels in the first few days of 2017. For some, they believe this is overtly ambitious, judging from all the plethora of problems or challenges that the industry is facing presently. What do you make of that?
Well, the document itself says at one point in time we produced 1.1 billion. I think that's the statistic as of now. The Niger Delta issue is one that's been long-standing, but some of us have always thought that these are things you can find a solution for. I believe that one thing that we could do in this country with regards to Niger Delta is to open up the region. What I mean by that is that government naturally creates an enabling environment for business to thrive. It does not necessarily go to do business itself. The Niger Delta, that document is very comprehensive. You could see that a lot of human capital effort has been put in preparing that document. And of course, in this country, we are very knowledgeable people. We know what we do. Take out that document any day and look at it. You'll find that it is comprehensive. It talks about the operating environment for the oil and gas industry. It talks about Nigerian content, that is domestication in the industry. It talks about policy formulation, guidelines, and governance, including transparency and accountability. It talks about investments, in the industry. So it is very all-embracing. Now, the operating environment in the Niger Delta is a swampy wetland, and as the document also says, when you take the human development index for people living in that region and you compare it with other oil-producing areas, it is very, very low. Now you ask yourself, what can you do to ensure that these people are happy with us, other Nigerians who are not oil producers? What I think government should do is, it has there that it will create, for instance, a gas park in Ogidegbe. And I know another one was also proposed for Warri. If you go to Warri today, you'll find that it's like a ghost town. The oil companies have left there and they have departed. But if you have that gas pack in place, you find business booming. All these idle hands will be gainfully engaged in employment, and they will not, like the document acknowledged, they will not be engaged in crisis entrepreneurship. The document mentioned crisis entrepreneurs. These are entrepreneurs who thrive when there's a crisis. You know, otherwise they are not genuine entrepreneurs. But I think government can do one thing: set up, including, for instance, the modular refinery. They talk about modular refinery. Yes, why don't you establish modular refineries at that point of wellhead where, you know, the oil is processed? Why don't you, you know, in the oil fields, why don't you have some modular refineries such that you have the finished product coming out near the oil production sites, such that all you need to do is evacuate the finished product from that region? And that will, first of all, give employment to the local people to add value to the product, and it will make them stakeholders in the security of that additional investment in the region. And like it happens, if you go to Houston in America, you'll find that you find refineries upon refineries upon refineries in a big expanse of land, miles upon miles and miles. And then you will also see rail lines running, in addition to pipelines, transporting finished petroleum products of gas, petroleum, naphtha, ethanol, and all of that, being evacuated from the Houston area around the Gulf region. So why don't we try to site additional industries in those regions and keep them busy? Open up the swampland. When you open up and put parks, industries like that, you have communication with the people by modern means. And in addition to that, the pipelines that were laid several years ago, you could see in the Niger Delta region, pipelines on the surface. Nobody will accept that in modern day petroleum industry. Pipelines are buried deep in the soil, such that they cannot be tampered with. Another thing is that document talks about investment in the Niger Delta area. Yes. But from what we heard last week, government was talking about $10 billion being invested in Niger Delta region.
Infrastructure fund?
Now, that announcement has caused some confusion.
In what way?
Because what government ought to be saying is that it will open up the region, create environment for private sector to invest in the region, and not to give the impression as if it's giving $10 billion to the people. I mean, that's why there's that confusion.
Okay,
to my mind, the government should have left it at the point of say, well, we will create an enabling environment in the Niger Delta region, so that companies, private sectors will invest in the region, and we will have less militancy.
All right.
I think that that will have been better put.
Better put. Okay,
you know,
I'm sure they're listening, Dr. Deriso. Mr. Banwo, let's again look at another aspect, which is, of course, related to the issue Dr. Deriso had just talked about. The document also seeks to move Nigeria away from, importing petroleum products, by 60% by 2018, and also aspiring to become a net exporter of same petroleum products by 2019. Now, that will depend on the state of our refineries. Now, will the time frame, be sufficient to put the refineries back in, optimal production capacity?
Well, I don't know how the government plans to do it, but like I always say, it's good to set targets and ambition. And it's good to set them high, so that even if you don't hit them, you hit close to them, which is which I think development-minded government should do. In terms of the details of how that is done, which is what we should be doing now, which is why this program is important. Now we are dissecting this. We are challenging its practicability. and we'll get the government to go back and rethink the practicability and see whether it will work. And as they go on, perhaps they will come up and say, hey, perhaps we misplaced this target we need. And then that debate keeps government on its toes so that they can get something done. I think for the purpose of debate and provoking action, these targets, as ambitious and almost unrealistic as they sound, is a good way to start. Now, when you talk about local refining, the benefits are numerous. Beyond getting to become net exporter and all of that, is the fact that our dependence on importation, which affects our forex, our reserves, the value of our currency, and cost issues, can be addressed. When you import less, I remember very well when we talk about, if you remember the F10 policy, substitute with ethanol. Let's have an ethanol blend so that we reduce the importation. The idea was let's reduce what we import so that we have more control within and we have local refining. When you do that, you create jobs. When you do that, you depend less on importation. There's what they call energy security. Your energy is not dependent on what happens on the high seas. So those are very important. Now, in terms of whether it will be done by 2019, the time has started ticking. This thing is supposed to run. There are medium-term issues, there are long-term issues. We don't know what they want to do with the refineries. Okay, I know at the tail end of this is our high hopes about the 650,000 liters per day of Dangote.
Do we even know the state of the refineries at the moment?
No, I'm coming. I'm telling you what government is thinking. I've been in this sector for a while, so I can tell you some of the thinking. That refinery that is promised could come on stream by then. We have already 445,000 of all the other refineries at the moment that are not working. Maybe there will be investment in them to put them up. Maybe some of the modular refineries
well,
will
they
come
said
all of these are based on a lot of assumptions. But because I don't, because I don't work for government, I don't have the details.
No, the document says that they will source for between 1.4 and 1.8 billion to put the refineries in working order.
Them. That was the word.
Beautiful, but in this country we have experience.
That is not a lot of money.
That is where I'm going to in terms of the details. We have had this before. The reason why there's so much noise about sell the refineries is because it has become almost like a black hole. Now, we have some body language issues about this government being different. But we also know that since this government came on board, they have invested in those refineries. In fact, at the point they told us, oh, well, it's already 60%, and then everything goes down. So I know there's a credibility issue. Do we believe that this can be done? But beyond lamenting, like we have tried to do a lot in this panel, especially from the other end, I think it's time to be optimistic.
What do you think can be done in the short term? Because we have just between now and 2019 to achieve this target. What can be done?
Well, the fact remains that you cannot build a refinery overnight, and you cannot buy it off the shelf. And you need people to invest in it. Government does not have money to build refineries. We're in a recession. You need to attract investors to do that. Now, that is why I see this as a holistic package. As you improve the environment, you may get people willing to invest. If you get people who are willing to invest and they are sure they will make profit, people will invest. If there's enough security for people to do business, people will invest. So the optimism is that when you begin to implement this holistically and people begin to say, Nigeria is actually safe enough, the population is there, the market is there, let's invest. I think that people can invest. I don't know if the refineries will be ready, depending on the site. You can have small refineries in little places that you can finish in good time, like you do with the IPP, where you have power plants here and there to contribute to the grid. The mind of government, I don't know. But I am saying that it's time we have some level of optimism. At least we have something which will hold government accountable by 2019. And we know where we are. And hope that whenever they stop, if they don't finish, we can have some continuity.
All right, Mr. Abamu, thank you very much. I will quickly go over to Benin now. Professor Wumi Iledari, because you've listened to the different areas of concern, both for guests here as well as Mr. Nain, who left us earlier. Well, we definitely need to attend to this high cost of production as well as have them work. Where do you stand in all of this as the roadmap is projecting?
Well, honestly speaking, and like I said, I think we should look at this as a good signal. And this is not brown nosing. This is telling it as it is. For the first time in 13 years, we have a Ministry of Petroleum Resources giving us where they want to go. And also, if you look at that policy, there are efforts there because they know a policy does not have the power to act without the law backing it up. So now they put forward what we call the Nigerian Petroleum Industry Reform Bill, and they are thinking in terms of the Nigerian Petroleum Fiscal Reform Bill. These are proposals. If you look at the policies are just, and they even give you the implementation strategy that they are going to follow. I commend them for that. Now, when we go to the National Assembly to get the power to execute the strategy, then there will be stakeholders meeting. There are certain things in that policy instruments that they are putting forward that are debatable. But at least there's something that we have on the ground. I do not want to think that the government is saying they are going to give $10 billion to Niger Delta. I think it's a misinterpretation of the plan. I think what I see with respect to the national Niger Delta security is what we have preached over the year. Go to Niger Delta, even build roads to nowhere. Let there be infrastructure, let there be power, let there be an energy corridor in the Niger Delta area so that the young people could be engaged. I mean, there's nobody who is interested in just hand out. You could see what Lenny say. Even to get ladies to marry them is difficult, but if they are employed, we have ladies that will marry them. And so these are the things that I think the government has put in place right now. It's a good roadmap. Let's look at the refinery. I personally do not succumb to us selling up government assets without knowing the value to get from it. So if the government, and even if you have a house, you want to sell a house, first of all, you renovate it so that you can get value for your asset. And that's what the government is trying to say. Government actually put a framework there through which they are going to fund some of these proposals that they have. They may not be fact perfect, but they could be perfected through debate and negotiation. Let's look at the empowerment that they put forward, business environment. They even talk about tax holiday, tax incentives. They have so many instruments there. The only thing they need now is law to back it up so that they can operate. Now, I have concern with respect to the Ministry of Petroleum Resources, with respect to whether we professionalize it. Because there's no way you can bring somebody from transportation or somebody from mining or somebody from sociology to come and head a ministry that is supposed to be professional. It doesn't happen in the Ministry of Justice. It doesn't happen in the Ministry of Finance. Do we want to begin to think in terms of having a competent workforce in the ministry so as to be able to develop the policy that will take this industry up there? If you go to the US, you have an example. The Department of Energy is not just staff with sociology people or political scientists or lawyers. So those are issues that the law will back up. No, I commend them. They said they will go to the National Assembly so as to be able to find the law that can even look at all the agencies. Some of these agencies used to report to the office of the presidency so that they can have power. Now you took them to the Ministry of Petroleum. You don't even have a minister. I'm sorry to say. You see, the law, the Constitution says that the ministers of the Federal Republic of Nigeria must get the consent of the Senate. Does the Minister of Petroleum today have the consent of the Senate? Which probably means we don't have a Minister of Petroleum Resources. We only have a Minister of State. These are things that need to be put properly if these policies should work. Let the truth be told. We cannot do most of these things unless we have a good governance structure. The only institution that can give a good governance structure is the National Assembly. And you have to put them into the focus. And that's what we've been trying to do over these many years, synthesizing the legislators to understand the intricacies of the oil and gas industry if they are going to deliver the dividend to build this economy. There's a lot of work to do. Listen, it's not only this policy alone. Every sector, you must have something like the power policy. You must have something like the economic policy. You must have monetary policy. You must all of these things. That's why I still want to say this is good beginning. But I wish this government, in my opinion, we extend it to the economic sector. I want to say and put on record, there's nothing you can accomplish if the overall economic sector is not in the same direction as the petroleum industry is going. Right now, in my opinion, the president of Nigeria needs to wake up quickly and set up the Office of Economic Advice. I keep saying that, whereby you have different divisions in this Office of Economic Advisor that will look at monetary policy on behalf of the government, we look at the petroleum even industry, we look at the macroeconomic sector, the microeconomic sector, the mining sector. That is the office of the president, the chief economic advisor. All of these need to synergize. I really want every ministry to think about what the Ministry of Petroleum has just done. It's a good job they have done. The policy may not be perfect, but by the time you put the law behind it, it's going to take us in the right direction in this industry. This petroleum policy is domesticated. That's what I like about it. It's not about earning foreign exchange, which is what we've done about the oil and gas over the years. How can we get more dollars? For the first time, in my opinion, I read it over and over again. The emphasis is how can you use the oil and gas industry to grow the national economy. It begins with making sure that your gas resources is dedicated towards generating power. And that's what I like about this policy. There are other things I don't like this concept of IJV. It has to be revisited, because you cannot have 6 IJVs and there won't be a lot of interference. And then you are going to literally weaken the National Petroleum Corporation. I want to challenge the minister to go back and look at the institutional governance bill that was given to him several months ago and think about that. I think it's in the Senate now, and they are reading over and over again. All of these policy issues that were raised were addressed in the institutional governance bill. And I challenge the National Assembly to pay attention to it. No, let's move away from this regional interest and let the national interest govern whatever we do. And listen, the potential for Nigeria is unlimited, and I believe it. That's why I came back. And I'll continue to pursue national interest over personal interest. That is what is going to take us to the next level.
All right, thank you very much, Professor Wumi Iledari. We'll also want to pursue that national interest for every one of us to see that it's working. It's Good Morning Nigeria. Of course, a break beckons at this point. Let's take some breather, at least with the guests. The tweets have been pouring in. We'll take them just after the break. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria.
Who are you? And what is your predicament?
Please, I'm looking for Candy. Who is living here? In this compound?
Oh no, this is a premises. The compound is an amalgam of chemicals, and there is no Candy living in this premises.
This week on your award-winning comedy series, Professor John Bull, starring Kanayo Okanayo, Mercy Johnson, Queen Wokoye, Funky Malam, Bimbo Akintola, Ime Bishop, Yomi Fash Lanso, MC for God.
Who was you? What was you found?
Auntie, I look at you. I going to look for my sister. I know you are poor.
Here. You was found the place. Call me. Okay?
Say somebody.
She's definitely not my sister.
Shut up!
Professor John Bull, fasten your seatbelts this Tuesday and Friday, 8:30 to 9 p.m. on NTA Network International and Star Times. It's absolutely bombastic.
Over and out. The largest data network, Glow, grandmasters of data.
With an increasingly volatile economy, there has never been a more fitting time to own your space and carve out new opportunities. Join over 1,000 women at the 15th Women in Management, Business and Public Service WIMBIZ Annual Conference as we discuss the next frontier, new landscape, new possibilities. Topics include Beyond Parity, inspiring the next generation of female leaders, women in mining, unlocking the Nigerian mining opportunities, and the billion naira tourism industry, monetizing the beauty within, among other topics. Date is Thursday the 3rd and Friday the 4th of November 2016 at the venue Echo Hotel and Suites, Victoria Island, Lagos. It starts at 8 a.m. prompt daily. To register, visit www.wimbizannualconference.com or call 0803-594-6249. WIMBIZ, 15 years of inspiring and empowering women.
All right, thank you for staying with us. I hope you're finding our conversation on the new roadmap, of course, 7 big wins in the petroleum sector, quite interesting. I am, indeed, with a number of tweets that have come in. I would like to ask you to, of course, keep sending them in. Our Twitter handle is right there on the screen. But let's quickly begin with Mike Ayakwo. Mike Ayakwo tweets, President's action is a step in the right direction. We must sanitize our petroleum industry for future growth and development.
And from Sani Makoji says, the ideas behind this roadmap looks juicy and hope rekindling. However, our problem from the past had been lack of implementation. The document seems to hammer seriously on transparency and accountability. Will those end corruption in this sector?
And Chika Ugo tweets, it's indeed a good policy direction to revive the oil sector, but my fear is whether the government will implement accordingly.
Francis Jethro says, our oil industry has corrupt elements if our government would be fair enough and clean up the system.
And Daniel tweets, Nigeria has always had beautiful policies and roadmaps on paper. Implementation, nepotism, and corruption are always the problem.
From Ahmed Magaji says, does the roadmap address sustainability issues and clean ways of responding to pollution of oil-producing areas?
And Emmy Song tweets, don't you see the issue of Niger Delta in this roadmap as duplication of function? What is NDDC doing?
And from Enzo, we learned that the idea of this roadmap is to encourage local content. How does it at the same time discourage illegal refineries?
And finally, from Oladimeji Olaniyi tweets, the government must ensure that the common man in the Niger Delta are well catered for, and not just the militants or the village heads. All right. Those are the tweets that have come in. We'll continue to read them out to you as soon as they come in. But let me again return to Mr. Banwo here. Mr. Banwo, the president, in speaking to the 7 big wins, said, and I'd like to quote him, he said, of course, we all have heard it, oil and gas remains critical enabler for the successful implementation of our budget and a source of funds for laying a strong foundation for the diversification of our economy. Do we have an idea of the financial impact, from this roadmap?
Well, the roadmap seems to project expectations in terms of revenue. I saw part of it, I think, under the frequently asked questions. What would be the financial impact? And there's indication that it will eventually raise revenue that will be available to fund the budget over a period of time. How realistic the projection is another thing, because again, with oil prices and revenues and outputs, is fluctuation. But at this time of the session, you cannot have a roadmap in this sector that is not thinking of how to ensure you have revenue. Because like the president said, beyond borrowing, the major source of our domestic resource mobilizations remain this sector. And if you need resources from within to invest anywhere else, you need to just make sure. Somebody always say that's our cash cow. And if you have a cash cow, then you do well to take very, very good care of it. So I think that part of why you grow the entire sector is, yes, revenue, but like the prof said over there, is beyond revenue. And the revenue in a cyclical way. Because when you create jobs and people have jobs and they pay taxes, then you revenue. When companies are functional and they make profit and they pay tax, you have revenue. Your royalties, you have revenue. You are selling, you have revenue. So it's a cyclical thing. If the sector works well, it is healthier for the overall economy. And that's what I was trying to say about it no longer being seen as an enclave economy. It is now seen as something that must contribute, which is what the prof talked about, is domestication. It tries to, because the major challenge at the moment, where we're having job losses and all, is that local entrepreneurship, small and medium enterprises are dying, they cannot compete, they are not viable, they are not competitive. But if from that sector, you're able to begin to drive some form of local entrepreneurship that ensure that you build up local individuals who have capital, local partnerships that invest, then you can begin to have this overall issue of creating employment. You can have people beginning to innovate technology. We're talking of ICT. You can have people bringing, you can actually begin to attract people in diaspora who can come and put in their skills. And what that does is to ensure that gradually, using the sector as an entry point, not an end in itself, you will begin to see a spread of how resources become available to be invested in agric. You are having, look at what, one of the challenges with local refining is that you send your crude away and you just get diesel. No, you get diesel and petrol. The other things, they say in a barrel of oil, what you get is much. The plastic, the petrochemical, the fertilizer. But when you begin your local refining, you begin to make available feedstocks to other sectors that can now support the economy. You're talking of agriculture. Nobody goes to the farm with hose.
Are we riding on the available old policies from the corporation, or do we need a new policy to drive this new roadmap?
No, the roadmap admits that you need to rejig the policies. That's why the first big win talked about policy. It talks about oil, it talks about gas, it talks about downstream, it talks about fiscal, and then it talks about the legislation. I think that's the fifth. So it admits that the policies we have will not drive it. Yeah. And what it is committing to is that we need to rejig the policies and the legislations and institutional framework to drive the policy as part of its own implementation. It is inbuilt. That's my reading of the document.
All right, Mr. Banwo. Let's come back quickly to Dr. Jirisu. Earlier on, while Professor Wumi in Benin was talking about areas of interest to him, and all those one that he also had some misgivings, taking a look at the joint ventures, especially with the international bodies. Now, I know you had some stints with NAPIM, which is the investment arm for exploration and production. Now, let's take a look at existing fiscal terms of a production sharing as well as other joint areas. What should the government be doing differently to actually getting more agreeable to us in a sharing policy as well as other areas of existing terms of policies?
Thank you very much. I think that's a very pertinent question. The document says that we've been able to get a pledge of about $80 billion from the Chinese people in investing in Nigerian oil and gas industry. At the same time, the document talks about incorporated joint ventures, yes, rather than unincorporated joint ventures, which we currently operate. The document also talks about accelerated revenue and income from the oil and gas industries. One senses from all of that government will divest its shares, some of its shares, from the joint venture. Let me make it a little bit more explicit. At the moment, government has about 57% shares in the Shell BP Petroleum joint venture. It used to be 60%, but I think during the Abuja regime, government divested 3%, just 3%. And that was a lot of money. And that gave the country a lot of money. So I am sensing, I'm not too sure, perhaps the government intends to do a similar thing. But it would have been fine for government to sensitize Nigerians as to exactly what it means by incorporating joint ventures, incorporated joint ventures. Because the structure will then change. Ownership structure of the joint venture will change.
Definitely.
So who owns what? Is government going to own less than 50% and therefore does not own controlling shares in each of those joint ventures? These are things government ought to sensitize us so that we know exactly what direction we ought to go. Because if they do divest a few percentage of their shares, there will be a lot of dollar in the country. Maybe that is where some people are talking about sale of assets. But we need to know precisely how government is thinking. Yeah. Now, when you talk again about incorporated joint ventures, you are looking at ownership structure. If government owns less than 50%, if it owns 49%, just the same way that it does now in the LNG, it means that it does not have absolute controlling interest there. And that means that decisions for operating those companies will become dependent entirely on profit motive, and they will be better run. But these, again, are things we have to consider. Is that the best interest for this nation? These are things I think government should be thinking. Now, also, the document talks about production sharing contracts, which we currently run. Some of them we've had issues, like the Bonga, we have a lot of issues, taxes and all those things unresolved.
So such need to be revisited.
Yeah, to revisit them. And it rightly says that we could explore having new production sharing contracts in place. Well, if we are going to get investment, foreign investment in oil and gas industries, then that petroleum industry bill must be in place.
Okay.
Fiscal regime.
Sorry, Dr. Evans Diruso, I'm sorry, because we're almost running out of time. Yeah. Yes, we've just talked about the petroleum industry bill, and I'd just like to throw it to Professor Iledare. Prof, we'd like to know wherein lies the PIB and what becomes of it in the new scheme of things. And secondly, if you will take this very, very briefly, what direction should the government be looking at to attain the target of expanding our production capacity in gas? In gas?
Briefly.
Quickly, let me quickly attend to this incorporated joint venture. And I want to say again that if you take the Petroleum Industry Governance Bill, it has actually addressed this issue with respect to what we do in the oil and gas industry. I think that Petroleum Industry Governance Bill, which I think would be probably margin to what the minister is talking about with Petroleum Industry Reform Bill, it actually divided the assets of the government into two. One, the JV assets and other assets, and two, the non-operating assets, which are the PSC and so on and so forth. And it created an asset management corporation that will handle those PSCs so as to be able to benchmark costs. Then in the JV asset, which is given to NNPC, there's something there that created a National Petroleum Corporation, which will be registered by CAMAC, which is going to be equivalent to what we call the IJVs. And from there, the government will never have to give money except the first seed money for the first year. Thereafter, it is on their own to go and raise money, and the government will continue to gradually divest its shares from that National Petroleum Company. Usually, the fact that you don't have a controlling share does not make you not to be a National Petroleum Company. That is what I think is right now in the Senate. Now, with respect to expanding our capacity, some of the problem we have with not having enough power is that most of the gas that we have are associated and they are dedicated. They are dedicated to some of the gas projects that are working in Nigeria like now, like the West African gas pipeline, like the LNG, and other gas projects that we put in place to be able to stop flaring. Now, if we are going to be able to expand our gas resources, we need to go after what we call non-associated gas. And this one requires a fiscal regime that will drive gas upstream activities. And this is where you have to commend the minister's current policy in terms of being able to create a different gas policy for natural gas in Nigeria. Before now, gas is just looked at as a byproduct that makes somebody's heart cringe when you discover it. But with a new gas policy, with a new gas policy framework, and with a new gas fiscal regime, they will create an incentive that will make people to go and look for non-associated gas. And that is the way to go. In my opinion, I still want to emphasize, when national interest is maximized, regional interest will be fine. But when regional interest is maximized at the expense of national interest, everybody suffers. That's what we have going on for us in Nigeria. Let us begin to think national, and that will take care of all of us together, because we are better off with a maximized national interest than individual interest. And I think this policy is going to move us in that direction if it is implemented appropriately with round pegs in round hole. And this is the challenge the government has, in my opinion.
Professor Wunmi Iledare, thank you very much for your concluding remarks. Of course, Professor Iledare is Prof of Petroleum Energy, Economics Management and Strategy. He's also Director, Emerald Energy Institute, University of Port Harcourt, and President, Nigerian Association of Energy Economics. We'd like to really appreciate your contribution on Good Morning Nigeria today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Also like to say a big thank you to Dr. Evans Dirisu. He's chartered accountant, tax advisor, management and financial consultant, former director.
No, I wasn't a director at all.
Oh, okay, all right. Of course, you were with
I
National
was a
Petroleum
manager.
Investment Management Services, NAPIMS. Thank you very much.
Thank you, madam.
All right.
Thank you,
and
madam.
Mr. Kalawale Banwo, you just like to say one thing about the commitment to environmental sustainability.
Yes, I just wanted to say that in this roadmap, I see very practical and time-bound commitment for the Ogoni cleanup. The implementation of the UNEP report with the cleaning of the Ogoni cleanup and the commitment henceforth to ensure that the environment matters in the exploitation of resources. I think this is a good thing, and I think we should begin to demand that government keeps to those timelines for our people in the Niger Delta to begin to see that government truly cares about them.
All right, thank you very much, of course, Mr. Banwo, Senior Program Officer, Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Center. Thank you for, of course, keeping the watch.
Thank you.
All right, quickly now to our other segments. We're talking sports first. Nigerian players in the diaspora continue to put up a fine form at their various clubs and helping to secure valuable points. Let's join our sport desk for more details.
Same time tomorrow. From all of us here in the studio, I am Claire Adilabu Abdul Razak. Have a good day.
My name is Blessing Abu. We wish you well. See you tomorrow with a fresh package of the program. Thank you for watching.